Tag Team from the Scorpion Masqué is an auto battler and a deck builder where you never shuffle your deck. But how does that even work? I'm Dr. Brian McDonald. This is Brains on Games. Let's talk about Tag Team from the Scorpion Masqué. Tag Team is a two-player game. It works for people aged 10 and up, and games only take about 15 minutes to play. This one is light to medium in terms of its complexity. It's not too hard to figure this one out. And really what you're trying to do, each player is going to have two fighters, and you're just trying to knock out one of your opponent's fighters. Like I said, this is a game with deck building elements. So you're going to take an individual deck for each of your fighters, and you're mixing those cards up together to form your deck. Each fighter has a starter card that they're going to use, and so you're going to begin with only two cards in your deck to choose from. And then you're placing those in the order in which you want them to be played. What is an auto battler? Well, this is a situation where you've got your deck of cards, and like I said, this starts with only two cards. Each player is simultaneously flipping over that top card, and then they're carrying out the action on that card. Because you've got your cards mixed together and there's a deck for each character, well then any attack or block that you're carrying out is affecting the other person's character who's showing on their card. So in this case, we've got Mephisto versus Mordred over here. I'm going to get +1 strength. You've got these little purple counters that dictate how strong you're going to be. And it's a game where as you play through each round, your actions become more and more powerful until there's going to be a big blow up at the end. So they call this an auto battler, but I would say you could even describe it as an action programming game because you're not shuffling your deck, but you're adding cards. Now, I guess I didn't shuffle this very well, so I've only got cards for Qingxi over here. You're not shuffling your deck, you're adding new cards to the deck, but all the cards are going to stay in the same order. So I might decide, oh, I want to take this card. The other cards go to the bottom of the deck. And we found in most of our games, maybe you'll get to see the first couple of those cards again, but usually the game's over by the time the deck cycles through. And then when you're adding those cards to your deck, you can place it at the top or the bottom or in the middle somewhere. But like I said, you can't shuffle anything. And this is what makes this game so interesting because some of the cards will allow you to block an opponent, or Mordred in particular has some actions where if the opponent doesn't attack, this is going to happen. Different things will happen based on the opponent's actions. Because nobody's shuffling, as the decks build up, you need to remember what order your opponent's cards are in order to be able to make sure that you can block a big attack that's going to take out one of your characters, or make sure that you're going to be able to heal when the time comes so that you're not going to get KO'd on the next attack.
Ready?
Yep, I think so.
Oh, block. So that's a scheme.
Okay.
We'll see what happens.
Oh,
interesting.
Okay, yes.
So healing 6, is that what I understand?
Your partner heals 6. That's perfect. You do have a good team. My block was not successful. That's not working.
Scheme again.
New scheme. And I'm attacking. That's the golem though this time. I'm attacking,
Okay,
right?
give the golem. If they already have it, attack instead.
Okay.
So it's already having it.
So your golem attacks
2
for 2. Okay, and she attacks for 2. The golem. The golem.
Oh, yeah, the golem. Yeah. All right.
He gets +1 strength.
All right, so I attack.
Okay.
1.
Okay.
And if attacked successful, I
Execute another scheme.
Yeah.
You really do need to pay attention to what your opponent is doing and where their cards are so that you can place yours in the right place to block an attack or to have the maximum impact on the game at the moment where you want to do that. There are some characters who can heal or reflect damage or control their opponents for a turn and reflect their damage to another character. Sometimes there are fighters who can increase the strength of their partner, or they might even be able to heal their partner or themselves. So there's lots of replayability here because there are so many different fighters in the game and different combinations that you can have. What skills, though, are you practicing when you play a game like Tag Team? Well, this is very much a memory game. You need to remember your opponent's deck and what order their cards are coming in so that you can say to yourself, that big attack is coming on their third play. I need to put a block in the third space in my deck to make sure that I don't get knocked out in the next round. So it becomes more and more complicated because slowly you're adding one more card each time. So there is a huge memory component here. And as I said, that's really what makes this game fun and strategic, is the fact that you've got those cards that aren't being shuffled. So you have to remember what order your opponent's actions are happening in. There's a planning element to the game too, because your characters are building up, your fighters are building up as you add more cards to this deck. They might be becoming stronger or developing more abilities. You're thinking ahead too, because if I put all of Mordred's cards and I'm not putting any of Qing Shi's cards in my playable deck, then he's going to be the one who takes all of the attacks because that's the card that's coming up against my opponent. So there is some planning, and whenever we're talking about planning, that's an example of an executive functioning skill, those behaviors that you need to work towards a goal. So Tag Team is a game that very much focuses on memory in particular, and there's some planning there as well. Final thoughts, though, about Tag Team. Well, this is a game that has lots of different fighters, and one of the things that I think is really helpful is that the box does come with the fighter's guide that gives you an idea about how each of these fighters' decks work and how they play out, and any special rules that might, or special counters that might be included with that fighter. So this does make it really convenient. The rule set is super simple. The symbology, the logos on the cards are very easy to understand, and then the actions are explained in text underneath. So you've got a logo, so at a glance you know what the card is going to do, but you've got text underneath for a new player who's still learning what all the symbols mean. It's very, very well designed, I think. The characters you're going to have some favorite characters and some less favorite characters, I think. Because some of the fighters are more complicated to play than others, and some of the pairings work better than others. So if you're drafting, then there might be certain fighters that you're going to want to choose, but maybe instead you're assigning the fighters at random, which is usually how we played, or I would take, because I was the one who was usually teaching the game, I would give new players some simple characters, and then I would just take a couple at random so that I wasn't, I didn't have some unfair advantage because I know how all the decks work because I played the game multiple times. It's the fact that you're not shuffling the deck is really what makes this game great, I think, because it turns each turn into kind of a sequencing. It's like a sequencing puzzle where you're trying to remember the order of your opponent's actions, and then you're trying to counter those the best you can while still getting your attacks in at the same time. If you were shuffling the deck every time, this game would not be nearly as much fun as it is, but you've got that tension of trying to counter your opponent, and sometimes you're cheering for yourself that you did it, and then other times you're like, oh, I messed that up completely, and your opponent's laughing at you. So it's a game where it goes fast. I really like the fact that these are about 15-minute battles. It doesn't take very long to play the game. You're just flipping cards once you've chosen your card. Really, the long part is figuring out where you want to put that extra card each round. It's just, you can play multiple games over a lunch break, right? This is a game I could see kids in high school, having on the table, just playing a couple of rounds during a break over lunch or after school or before classes. The decks are simple. The rules are simple enough, but the characters do, depending on which fighters you're taking, some of these guys are pretty complicated. It's a unique game, and like I said, with all the different combinations of fighters, you've got so many different kinds of decks that you'll be smashing together, but it really is the fact that you're not shuffling your main play deck that makes this game a lot of fun. I mean, a downside might be that because the play is simultaneous, then sometimes the timing might be a little confusing. That usually was not the case in the games that we played. It was rare where we'd have to think about or back at the rules to figure out what's supposed to happen or what order actions are supposed to happen in. It was never really a factor. You could have a game where you knock out your opponent and they knock out your fighter in the same round, in which case it would be a tie, and then you need to play again. There should be a rematch, right, when that happens. But that hasn't happened yet in any of the games that I've played. It's certainly something that's possible, though, especially as the power levels increase. By the time you're getting towards the end of the game, you might be doing 15 damage in a single attack. And if you're looking at these characters, they have 18 health, 13 health. You're going to knock somebody out in one shot at that point. So it's not a situation. Sometimes you're whittling down your opponents, but usually it's a situation where you get one good attack in that doesn't get blocked, and everything ends in that round. So but it's funny. You know, even if you're the one getting knocked out, usually it's kind of funny because you're like, oh, you know, I thought you were going to put that card on the top, but you put it on the bottom, and that messed up the whole order of my play. So this is a fun, I think, funny game that has a lot of replayability just based on all the combinations. A lot of opportunities, I think, for expansion too, because it is a game where you've got those individual decks of cards. When I played this game at Ludicon, that's where the folks at Scorpion Masqué gave me this review copy, was when I was at Ludicon. We did have one game where, you know, I was playing against a Francophone who was having a hard time reading the cards in English, and I would have had a tough time reading. We could speak to one another in English and French in some combination, but the cards are a little too complicated for us to understand if they weren't in our first language. But because they're separate decks of cards, we had a French copy of the game and an English copy of the game. So I had the English cards and my opponent had the French cards, and it worked out just fine. We were still able to play through the game. So, you know, we crossed the language barrier there on this one. And once you get used to the symbols and the different heroes in the game, it's not really a super language dependent game because the iconography is very clear. You're going to find yourself maybe sometimes disappointed that a certain card didn't come up in your draw so that you couldn't add it to your deck maybe, but that's the nature of the game in a deck builder. Sometimes you get the card you want, sometimes you don't. If you didn't get it one time, then maybe you need to play that fighter again so that you can try it in the next round. We had a good time playing this game. It is a two-player game only, so if you've got multiple people, it's a bit more challenging to get this game to the table, but we had a good time playing tag team. So I have to thank the folks at Scorpion Masqué for handing this one over to me at the end of Ludicon. We had a good time playing it. This is a fun duel that's really quite funny with characters that are very unique and lots of replayability for that reason. I've never played an auto battler before, and like I said, I would have called it an action programming game as opposed to an auto battler. The deck building element is simple and straightforward and easy. Thanks so much to the folks at Scorpion Masqué for sending this game my way. If you have any questions or comments, you can, of course, leave them in the comment section below the video, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go, and the previous ones are already up there. Brains on Games is the X handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed and the Blue Sky page. We're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video, you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.